So, Diane, if you don't hear that sound whenever you do a story, that means you're not recording. Just a little dig there, in case you missed it. We have been going through the book of Acts with a group from Asia that we have the opportunity to serve with. And it's been a lot of fun. And I've not gone through Acts for quite a while. And so this has been really just a gift. In the story we're doing today, if you remember back when, we've already discussed when the disciples were all arrested and they were put in jail, and God supernaturally delivered them from jail. But they were all together, right? So the 12 apostles were there, and there's something about community, right? Even when you're facing adversity. And then later on, persecution starts building in the church. Just before the story we're doing today, James, who was one of the inner circle, there was Peter, James, and his brother John, right, who were part of the inner circle. Herod took James, had him arrested, and then had him killed. Now, when you see the word Herod, that can be a little confusing because in the Bible you have Herod the Great, who was the one that tried to kill Jesus, that killed the babies in Bethlehem. Then you had his son Herod Antipas, who was the one that killed John the Baptist, because John the Baptist was going, hey, you married your sister-in-law, not cool. And now we have another Herod who's the grandson of Herod the Great. And he just rules over a small section of Israel, but we can see he kind of no, I won't. He kind of continues in the tradition of his grandfather, of being not a great guy. And so in our story, Peter has been arrested because Herod saw, oh, wow, man, the Jewish leadership, they love the fact that I had James killed. So let's do that again. And that leads us to our story from God's word. So on that very night when Herod was about to bring Peter out, Peter was asleep between two soldiers, and he was bound with two chains, and there were sentries that were guarding the prison. And whoa, an angel stood next to Peter, and there was a light that shone in the cell. And this angel struck Peter and woke him up and said, hurry, get up. And Peter kind of got up, and the chains fell from his arms. And the angel said, get dressed, put on your sandals. And so Peter did. And the angel said, wrap your cloak around you and follow me. And so Peter did. And as he was following the angel, he thought he was having a vision. Excuse me. And so as they passed the first sentry and then the second sentry, and they got to the door of the prison that led to the outside, and the door opened all by itself. And Peter and the angel went outside on the side of the street, and immediately the angel disappeared. And Peter realized this was real. It's no vision. And he said, now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel to rescue me from the hand of Herod and from the expectations of the Jewish people. And that's what we're going to stop right there. We're not going all the way into the rest of the story. So now I'm going to get you guys to help me with this story. So on that very night, what was Herod planning on doing? Bringing
Peter
before him.
Yeah, he was planning on bringing Peter out, and what was Peter doing?
Sleeping.
Yeah, between
2 sentries.
Yeah, two guards, 2 sentries, and he was
Had chained with 2 chains.
Yeah, chained with 2 chains, and there were sentries that were doing what? Guarding
prison.
Yeah, they
A
were
couple
guarding
places.
the prison. And whoa, what happened? 2 things happened in the cell.
Angel show up and there's light.
Yeah, an angel stood next to Peter, and there was light in the cell. And the angel, you remember what he did? Yeah, he struck Peter to wake him
Wake
up.
up, bud.
Yeah, and he said,
Get up.
Yeah, hurry, get up. And so Peter got up, and what happened?
The
Chains fell off.
Yeah, the chains fell off. And then, Vivian, what did the angel say next?
Put on your clothes and sandals.
Yeah, get dressed and put on your sandals. And so Peter did. And then the angel said,
wrap your cloak.
Yeah, wrap your cloak around you and
follow me.
Follow me. Yeah. And so Peter went out and followed him, but he didn't know what?
It was
real.
Yeah, he thought it was what?
Having a vision.
Yeah, he thought he was having a vision. And so they came to
first, second, something door.
Yeah, the 1st and 2nd centuries, and then they got
the gate,
outer gate, and
the outer gate. It just opened by itself, and they went outside along one street, and
the angel disappeared.
Yeah, immediately the angel left him, and when Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I am sure that
was real."
Yeah, and that the Lord has
sent his angel.
Yeah, sent his angel to
rescue me
from the
hands of Herod.
And the
hands of Herod and the
expectation of the Jews.
Yeah, the expectation of the Jewish people. And there's our story from God's word. So I'm curious, what do you think it might have been like for Peter to, obviously he would have heard what happened to James, right? And so in the middle of his grieving for his close friend James, he gets arrested by representatives of the same guy that arrested and killed James. So what do you think that might have been like for him?
Scared.
Okay, scared.
It's tough, but not enough to keep him awake at night.
Yeah.
Oh, hold that thought, because I do want to talk about that in just a minute. Anything else?
I think he is pretty sure he is the next one to be killed.
Okay, yeah, he kind of knows what's coming, doesn't he? Yeah, there's not much doubt in his mind what the next thing is.
But he has been in prison before and been let out.
Yeah.
It wasn't by quite such a nasty piece of work, but they were no sweethearts that put him in jail before.
And again, hold that thought for just a minute. Let me repeat the first part of this story, and I want to dig into that a little bit. So on that very night when Herod was about to bring Peter out, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, chained with 2 chains, and there were sentries guarding the prison. And an angel stood next to Peter, and a light shone in the cell. And we'll just stop right there. So, Diane, you mentioned, that he'd been in prison before. I wonder, do you all think there's any difference between being in prison with a bunch of other guys and being in prison all by yourself? And also being in prison by yourself when you know that one of your best friends just had the same thing happen to him and he was killed. I mean, how might this be different from the first time he was in prison with the rest of the apostles? What do you think?
This time might be not that lucky. Lucky that.
Okay. All right. Well, they've been delivered. You know, all of them been delivered before.
Or maybe he is in the state like, if I die, I die. If I live, I live.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you a question. Who was also one of the 12 that got delivered that first time?
John, right?
John? Yeah. All the apostles. Was James one of the apostles?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So he was delivered the first time. See, do you think the fact that James was delivered the first time and then killed this next time, could that have had any effect on Peter, do you think? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Well, I mean, I think it's got to be, and yet, I mean, this is just to me, I'm like, really, this guy is that dangerous? You know, to me, one of my favorite pictures in Acts is the picture of Paul being escorted by a ginormous number of soldiers.
Yeah.
And you would have wondered, like, who's this really scary prisoner that takes this many people to guard? And it's like, oh, look, it's the little preacher with the bad eyesight. And I feel like kind of the same thing, like, really? This is like maximum security. I was thinking like, oh, it's got to be scary with those guards. I think it'd be scary to meet the other prisoners in that prison.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to meet anybody that takes that, this much guarding.
Yeah.
This
is one bad dude.
It's got to be like really a little bit of like, this is the danger that you people see, that Herod sees.
Well, you mentioned that, Diane. I wonder, does this tell us anything about Herod and his knowledge of what God has done previously with the apostles, from the fact, because like you mentioned, it's a little bit of overkill. He's chained to two different guards with two different chains. There's guards at the prison. They had to walk past several different groups of sentries, right? So what might that show us about Herod's knowledge of what had happened previously?
I mean, maybe he knows these guys were in prison one day and they just kind of ended up slipping away. And well, how did that happen? But maybe he sees it as a rival, and this is just his standard. This is how I deal with rivals. I had a place I stick my rivals. It's my rival sticking place.
Anybody else? What do you say? What do you learn about Herod?
He knows that they got out of the jail before, but this is the only way he knows how to, prevent them from doing that. There are more layers of securities.
I wonder, do you think he's probably said something to the guards or to the commander of the guards, like, hey, this better go well? I mean, what do What do you see there?
I just feel very interesting. Usually the non-believer, they believe what God can do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Like, man, we better really ramp up the security if we're fighting against God. Well, let's, what do we learn about Peter from the fact he's asleep? Right? I mean, what do y'all see there?
it reminds me that Jesus told Peter before that you will be chained to the place, people, right? And so he probably think, well, this is my day, what Jesus predicted. So he just, okay, go sleep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, okay, this is fulfillment. Yeah. What's some of the rest of you see?
Yeah, I think Peter's just taking it as it comes. He doesn't have to know how this is going to turn out.
Okay.
And it's probably harder. Maybe at this point, it's harder for the people on the outside that are worried about Peter, because they might feel a need to do something. Like, what can we do to get Peter out? And
Well, let me plant another thought. So you're somebody who's been deeply emotionally grieving the death of a close friend, like one of your closest friends in the world, who you did ministry with every day, for who you'd lived with, right, for years at this point, been through thick and thin with, and you're grieving his death. And in the middle of your grief, you are taken by the very person that killed him. Do you think there's any physical, I want to use the word drainage, but I don't know if that's the right word, physical exhaustion that comes about from heavy grieving? Do you think possibly that, I mean, and I'm not saying that's the case, we're not told in the story, but is that a possibility, do you think?
well, any kind of emotions. He could have been really mad too.
Yeah, could have been ticked off. Yeah.
Yeah, like they did it to him, and now they've arrested me. And they're making my mama worry. And
I wonder, what do you think it might have been like for these guards? I mean, do you think 12 guys walking out of a prison with guards there, do you think that word would have gotten around to other guards? So is it possible that they kind of knew what had happened with the disciples before this?
I think he could seem like the cushiest job or the hardest job.
Okay. In what way?
Well, you know, most of the time you get two guard, you're just supposed to guard this guy. We've got the chains, we got all these doors. They may be to keep him in, but they may be to keep other people out. So if you've been meeting these Christian people, they just don't seem like a storm the gates kind of group. You know, they're sharing food with one another. The things we hear about the church, they're healing people. They seem a little bit more like the, I don't want to go political, but the trucker convoy in Canada with the bouncy castle and a hot tub, and not so much like the armed revolution. So you might be then you see the guy. This is not some hardened criminal with some, scars from the knife battles he's been in. This is a nice Jewish boy. So some of them might be thinking, this is not a bad, this guy's not swearing at us, he's not spitting at us. This is not a bad gig. And the others are going, what happens if God delivers him? Are we in big trouble?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else. What do you see there? What do you think? What do you think it might have been like for these guards? I really like Diane's thought. It could have been, oh, easy gig. Oh man, we need to make sure we don't mess this up.
They might be glad that there's more of them. There's like a bunch of them.
Okay.
They could be thinking, well, if anything happened, we have other people also, we can do this.
Yeah, security in numbers. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. So in this next part of the story, whoa, and to be real honest, I may leave the word behold there, because we just don't have an English word that really carries the idea of that. So that's as a storyteller, just to share with you guys, that is always a struggle for me. But because in some of the older versions, the word behold is, and it's just, it carries a certain weight, and so a lot of times I'll replace it with wow, but even when I do, I'm kind of like, I just don't, I still kind of like behold, right? This angel is standing next to Peter, and there's a light shining in the cell, and the angel strikes Peter and wakes him up, and says, hurry, get up. And so Peter, he gets up, and the angel says, get dressed and put on your sandals. And so Peter gets dressed and he puts on his sandals, and the angel says, all right, now wrap your cloak around you and follow me. And so Peter does, and he's thinking, okay, this is, I'm having some kind of vision. And so they go past the first and second sentries, and they get to the outer door, and the door opens all by itself. And they went out, and they went along one street, and immediately the angel left Peter. So kind of stop right there. Does it tell us anything about how hard Peter's sleeping from the fact the angel strikes him?
Yeah, he probably snores too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the guard sleeping too?
We don't know.
That's a good question, Flora.
I think there's a whole bunch of guards that are not going to have a memory of this event, and be very curious tomorrow.
Yeah, and so in the story, he's chained to two guards, and they walk by one set of guards, and then they walk by another set of guards to get out.
Yeah.
So the fact that these disciples had all escaped at one point, do you think these guards were probably on high alert, or do you think they were kind of sloppy?
They should be high alert, because that's the order. They watch over this guy. Don't let him get out of the prison. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Herod's taking this pretty serious, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like some people who are always like, those guys, they're not me. Yeah, I can see it happening on their watch, but I'm just plenty good, just doing my regular job, because that's who I am.
Well, let's look at this a little bit. So this angel appears suddenly, and there's a light in the cell, right? And then the chains fall off. So a light appearing and chains falling off. Is that a quiet event?
Well, I mean, light's pretty quiet.
Okay,
But,
okay, I give you that. All right, give you that.
but it's kind of noticeable. I mean, particularly in the ancient world, it takes quite a bit to get much light at night. So I'd say that would be very noticeable.
So do you see something supernatural going on here? I mean, beyond something beyond just normal? You know, it's not like the guards just are dozing on duty. I mean, what do you see?
It's supernatural. There's an angel. Of course, there's it's supernatural.
That's got, you know, kind of giveaway, right? Yeah.
Good catch, Vivian.
Just like the time just freeze. Everybody just stop and just freeze. But something.
Yeah, does anybody else get frustrated that the Bible doesn't give us those details? It's like, I want to know what's going on. What does this look like? Right? It's I want to know those things. And God's like, nah, you don't need to know that. Well, what do you all think
Maybe
about this?
Peter doesn't notice.
Oh, that the angel is there?
No, maybe Peter doesn't notice what happens with the guards.
Okay.
He's telling what he remembers from the
Okay.
story. He's the
Okay.
witness, and when he gets out, he's like, I wasn't paying any attention. There was an angel. I can't be paying attention to other soldiers.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Well, what do you all think about this angel and the way he responded to Peter? I mean, what is your just
I don't remember other places when angel showed up. There's a spotlight.
Yeah.
I'm like, really, when you said, and then there's light, I was like, oh, like no other. I don't remember other places that when angel show up, there's like a spotlight. It's like it's a light for the angel or for Peter. Who is it for?
Yeah, I agree.
I think maybe Peter needs a light to see his stuff.
That could easily be.
Where are my shoes?
You know, I have my phone. I have Irish Siri, and so if I want Siri to turn on my flashlight, I have to say torch.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that for a long time. I just thought it wasn't working. And then somebody mentioned it, like, yeah, no, you got to say torch. So how weird is that? But I mean, what is your how does the angel treat Peter? I mean, what do you see there? I'm just curious. You know, he's like
a guy that's not really awake yet.
Okay.
I mean, could you say, I've come to take you out of the prison, get ready, and let's go.
Yeah, it seems like the angel was in a hurry.
But instead, it's kind of step by step. Get up, put on your clothes, put on your cloak. Okay. Kind of like, oh, don't forget your cloak. I can see you're not with me yet, are you?
Yeah, and he strikes him. Right? It doesn't say like, hey, Peter, hey, buddy, hey, buddy, you need to wake up now. Like,
maybe he did, and then Peter didn't respond. Peter only remembered being slapped. Like, ugh.
All right. Yeah. Again, Peter sleep.
There were two small pokes before that. Peter has no idea. He gets to heaven, and the angel says, "Why did you make me look like that? I poked you first. I spoke in your ear, but nothing. I don't get any credit for that."
Well, and what about the way he says, "Get up quickly, dress yourself, put on your sandals. Okay, put on your cloak and follow me." I mean, what is your impression of the angel from his interaction with Peter here?
He was in a hurry, like chop chop, hurry up.
Okay, All right.
He sent his practical angel, not the poetic angel. This is the practical angel. No. Don't send, don't send, Jerry. Jerry's going to enter into all this small talk. No, send Bob. Bob will get the job done.
Bob the angel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So, yeah. Well, and what about Peter? He's doing all this stuff and he's like, oh, wow, what a nice dream. What a nice vision.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a couple of weeks ago. Peter did have a vision about the sheep,
Yeah.
coming down with the animals and things.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, what do we learn about Peter from the fact that he just doesn't get it until they're totally outside the prison?
Looks like he's slow learner, right? Just like last time, you need time to learn things.
All right.
I think it's kind of a gift because I don't have to get scared in a vision. But if I think this is really happening and we're walking past 3 sets of guards and getting to a big gate with probably a ginormous lock on it, I might get kind of like, whoa, are you sure we're going to do this? And if you think it's a vision, then you're just like, oh, okay, yeah. Sure, I'll go with you, Mr. Pretend Angel.
Well, and you mentioned that specifically the story says it's an iron gate, all right, that opened by itself. Do iron gates typically open quietly?
I mean, maybe at the palace, but probably not at the jail.
Yeah.
And that's usually not a high maintenance area. Is that secure? All right, good. Aesthetics is not really our deal. Hey, go fix that. It's making noise. Who cares?
And so then the last part of the story, they get outside on this side street, and immediately the angel leaves, and Peter came to himself and is like, now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel to rescue me from the hand of Herod and from all the expectations of the Jewish people. So what do we learn about Herod and the Jewish people here? I mean, does Peter have a knowledge of what Herod's plan was? Based on what he says here.
Yeah, they expect him to get killed.
Yeah, he kind of knew what Herod was up to, right?
Yeah. A long-term imprisonment is simply not a thing in the ancient world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too expensive. It's just not done. Punishments are fines or torture or killing, but they're not taking away of your freedom.
Yeah, life in prison didn't mean much. It was short term.
Yeah.
So what about the fact that not only that this angel has rescued him from the hand of Herod, but from the expectation of the Jewish people? What do we learn about the Jewish people and their influence in this? I mean, what do you see there? Do you see them having anything to do with Herod's motivation?
It's a crowd pleaser.
Hmm.
If I do this will please these Jewish leaders. Maybe not. Maybe Herod may not have his finger on the pulse of the average Jew.
Okay.
But if this is the leadership, and he might be like, oh well, these guys follow their leaders. It's probably going to please everybody. and at least it'll, well, please these guys, and let's face it, they're not an easy crowd.
Yeah.
Whiny, always complaining.
Well, I mean, what do we learn about God from the fact that he supernaturally delivered Peter from, from a sure death? I mean, what do you see there?
If God still have work for you to do, you won't die.
Okay. So God's good because he's delivering Peter from prison.
No, because God still have work for Peter to do.
All right.
I think, it shows the fellow believers that God is powerful, but God is powerful in his own way.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't need the believers to come and free Peter. He's not gonna, at this point, nothing happened as far as we know from the hand of God on those soldiers. Even the prison's not damaged. God can do this in a quiet way that is in a line with the way the kingdom of God is going to grow. It's not going to be political. Herod's trying to make this political.
Okay.
And I think God's just going, not today.
Well, let me throw a question out to you of a character that's not mentioned in the story, right? Because the inner circle was Peter, James,
John.
and John. So I wonder, what do you think it might have been like for John to hear about, oh, God delivered Peter from prison? How awesome. But wait, he didn't deliver my brother. Right? We tend to lean into the easy, whoop, whoop, Peter got out of prison stuff, right? But I mean, could you see where this could potentially be a bit of a struggle emotionally for John? And again, we're not told in the story, right? But I'm saying, is that a possibility? Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, I know many people has problem that why God saved this one, not that one. They will always question why.
But they're very close to the crucifixion.
Yeah.
And that God did not spare his own son. Stephen has already died. So martyrdom is a possibility. And yet it seems like most of the church, it seems to go about freely doing as they wish. Even though people have been scattered, there's still a pretty high degree of freedom to go about and preach and gather. So it's not simple.
No, it's not. And we tend to want to make it that way, right? We don't tend to want to wrestle with those things. I mean, today, does God still sometimes work in ways that doesn't seem quite fair? Does that still happen? That, from people's perspective, it's like, wow, God, why did you do this time, but not this time? Is that still an issue for some people? I mean, what might that look like? Just in general in the world today for for somebody to go to have a situation that God did something for one person, but not for another.
A lot of things like job, like why I pray for, job for years, and then this person prayed for job for 2 weeks, and then he got a job.
Yeah.
And then or things like, oh, I don't, everybody's, I need a car, this guy needs a car, and then he got a car, I don't get a car. Why?
Yeah, you make me think, Vivian. I'm on a, our church is on a college campus. We have a lot of young ladies, a lot of very godly young ladies, and yet, one of the things we see some of them struggling with is we have a lot of marriages. A lot of young women and young men getting married, but some of the godliest women in the church, none of the guys show any interest in at all. And they're beautiful. I mean, they are not just inwardly, but they're beautiful outwardly. And wow, what's up with that, God? And it's a, and I got to be real honest, it's a struggle for a lot of those young ladies. That hey, I'm being faithful. Where's my man? Right. So
yeah, and not just that, but you get young women that are being faithful, and then some of those faithful women get husbands and kids, and then there's other women out there, and they live with a guy for a couple of years, and then have a kid, and then they get married, and they seem to be perfectly happy, and they didn't do it the way you're supposed to do it, and yet they got the prize, they got the
Yeah.
life that they wanted, and that seems quite not not fair.
Yeah.
And then the culture thinks you're just plain weird. Like, well, why aren't you just going for what you can get right now, Mr. Right Now, instead of Mr. Right? What an idiot you are.
Well, I like that, Mr. Right Now instead of Mr. Right. That's well, I wonder if any of us have have something in our lives that it was a struggle for us to see God work the way He wanted to work and not the way we wanted to work. And we wanted Him to work. That maybe you or somebody that you'd be willing to share.
I feel that I'm the lucky one, really, really. And because 2 weeks ago, let me see. Oh, yeah, I had a car accident, and really, and just it's raining, right? And there's a car in front of me. I don't know why he want to come to my lane, and I just get scared. I push the brake button, and then my car on the highway just goes. I don't know go where, but I hit the bush and I hit the tree. And people call ambulance, they call police car, and I walk out and say, "What happened?" And I'm all fine, but and I thought my car was total, but it's not. Some guy just said that, "Let me try to move your car," and he back up my car. I said, "What? Still working?" And then come out, there's only a small dent.
Wow.
Bumper.
Wow.
It's on the highway, and I'm driving very fast, honestly. And I just feel that, well, I'm so lucky. And I know, like 1 or 2 years ago, a pastor on a highway because of raining there, because of the skid, and the pastor died.
Yeah.
And he has a family and 4 kids.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
I just feel like, oh, I'm so lucky to be spared.
Yeah. And again, that we don't understand. We're not God. right? We don't understand how or why he chooses those things. Well, I wonder how might this story help us in the future? I mean, what do you see in this story that could help you just in regular, real, actual life?
I love that this angel is just like, okay, Peter, stand up. Okay, stand tall. Put on your clothes. Don't forget sandals. And then in your jacket. Don't forget that your jacket. That's worth a lot, right? And then we're gonna go out. And I just like Mr. Practical Angel. That sometimes what I need is like spiritual understanding and the right word. And sometimes I just need something practical.
Yeah.
That's going to come to me step by step. And this just sort of said God's concerned about those things too. He can just move you along through something as simple as whatever is needed. I like that in this story.
Yeah. Vivian, did you have something you were going to share?
Yeah, I think it's also like a struggle for me. Like there are many songs, or a lot of time people will say, well, God did this, so he can do it again. Like there's so many songs about God will do it again.
Yeah.
Then like stories like this, your question is like, well, God doesn't do the same thing. And he might save someone, not save the other. And I think it's just a reminder that I should always leave room for God to do whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. To the realization that God is God and I'm not. I have to be reminded of that a lot. It just well, is there something in this story that just really speaks to your life? I really like that, Vivian, because that's real. I shared on Sunday, and I've shared with you guys before. My youngest granddaughter was all kind of struggles, and we were told there were going to be all kind of issues. My daughter's water broke at 17 weeks. She'd had a miscarriage the year before, and it's just I came to realize through this, I had a real struggle with God. I would have been highly insulted if anybody had mentioned it, but my default belief was I'm doing all these things for God. I'm going to all these countries. I'm making these sacrifices. And so because of that, these kind of things aren't supposed to happen to me. I was talking to one of our young man that's one of our pastors here at the church. And when we first started the church, his brother-in-law got cancer and over a period of months died. And his brother-in-law and his sister were integral parts of the plant of that part of our church. We have two churches that join together. And he said, I found the same thing, that I was struggling with God because, I would have been insulted if anybody had said it, but at my core, I really believed that, hey, I'm doing all these things so that I get a pass on the tough stuff. And I think this story is just a really good reminder. Yes, God does deliver, but that even when he doesn't deliver, he's still good. But because Peter and James are both dead now. Even though Peter was rescued, he still died. And eternity is still the same. And I think as believers, that's one of those things we need to really default to, that this is all temporary, but heaven is eternal.
Yeah, I used to get very annoyed when every time I hear people's testimony, like, oh, I like whether it was a job, a spouse, something, finance, and then they always call like, oh, seek the kingdom first, and then whatever you ask, we provide it. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Are you telling me I'm not getting the things I need because I'm not seeking the kingdom? Like,
Yeah.
it bugs me so much. It used to.
Oh, and I get that.
Yeah. I used to pray, and it's like, Lord, I just want a husband. Lots of women around the world have husbands for which they feel no desire or need whatsoever. Just lousy, crappy husbands. And places where marriage is really quite all messed up. Women getting beat and having to share your husband with several other women. And it's like, this seems so basic. Why is this so hard for you to do? But then you just have to go. And, I trust God. My dad died in an accident. He was 83 or 84.
Wow.
And he was on a ladder doing stuff in a tree. Wasn't a very high tree. He fell, and he had his cell phone on him. He called. He was conscious. They came and got him, and he broke a bunch of bones, and they were trying to work on him, but his heart was, it was having a hard time breathing, but he also only had one kidney because he'd had cancer before. So it was the first time that one kidney had been a problem, that to treat one thing meant to exacerbate the other, and both were key systems. Kidneys got to work, lungs got to work. And he'd been not in great shape that Saturday night, the day it happened. And the next day, they had somehow not gotten my contact information right, and I arrived and find out it's very bad. And I was really mad. Like, how could you do that? Go up in that stupid tree. And he had always said, I'm just gonna do stuff as long as I can. If I die from a car accident, I'm just gonna drive as long as they want. And like, other people could be involved. But he had, from the time I was, a kid, I remember him. He already had his philosophy of life. I'm like, did you have to go up a ladder though? By the way, my husband's only allowed to go up 2-3 steps max on a ladder. No other man is actually probably over the age of 40 is allowed to go up a ladder in my presence. It's just not done. Wouldn't get a wooden coffin. I'm like, no, I hate all trees right now. But with a little bit of time, my dad had cancer. A lot of people didn't know that it had come back. My stepmother had this very severe Alzheimer's. She would die a little over a year after he did. And his sister would die a month after that. And I look and I'm like, he went through enough. My aunt and my stepmother had some cognitive issues. It was, they didn't really take in necessarily all that was going on. I know he was old, he'd lived a long life, but sometimes you just also say, that person has done enough. Yeah. That's, and I hear other people like, oh, I could have my son and such back. And like, no, my dad did what he needed to do.
Yeah.
He was faithful well past when many people would say it's just a lot of stuff to carry around. And
yeah,
I don't, I was like, you did what you needed to do. And then you did stuff with a ladder, and no other men in my life are going to be near ladders, but okay, you did that, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not a ladder guy either, by the way. So thank you, Diane, for sharing that. Well, guys, thank you for this. I'm going to hit the recording now.